Okay, so I'm going to make a start. Welcome everybody. Thanks ever so much for joining us for AbilityNet Live. Our focus today is going to be on how we can stay connected. So something we've been thinking about a lot. A colleague of mine's written a blog for AbilityNet that the press are using this phrase a lot around social distancing and social isolation. And actually, it's more useful in a way to think about it as a physical distancing. And there's a very genuine belief from us and from the partners who join us today that using technology, we can maintain that social contact. And in the times that we live in today, it's never been more important. So just do a brief round of introductions because so my name's Sarah. I'm marketing manager for free services for AbilityNet, and I'm delighted to be joined by so many people today, including attendees, and I'm also joined by our county coordinator, volunteer county coordinator, Chris Grant. So welcome, Chris. Do you want to say a quick hi?
Yep, good afternoon. Hope everyone's well.
Okay, and from Care for the Carers, we've got Carol Gregory, so I'm really pleased to be joined by her and by Barbara from Action for Carers. And we also have James Beecher joining us from Citizens Online. So,
hi everyone. Lovely
wave from James there. Hi everybody. So I'll just run through what we're going to be covering in the webinar, a little bit of housekeeping, and we'll get stuck in. So what we're going to be doing today is our colleagues from carers organisations will be talking about some specific tips for carers in these times. And I think, you know, that's an element of this physical distancing, is that often we might be caring for people who are physically close to us, but now because of the new guidelines that are in place, we're having to do that at a distance, and that raises some very particular challenges. So we'll be talking about that in the context of using technology to stay in touch. Then we'll be looking at some means of keeping in touch with people. There are lots of things that you can do with the devices that you have already. So we'll be running you through those. And then we'll also be looking at some specific communication devices which are available to help you stay in touch. Throughout that, we'll be looking at the advantages and disadvantages. And we won't have a lot of time to do step by step how to set these up, but we will be doing some signposting around where you can find further information on that. So in terms of housekeeping, we're running live captions during the webinar. After the webinar finishes, slides, a transcript and a recording will be made available to everybody. If you could use the Q&A window to ask any specific questions, and my colleague Mark is monitoring the chat window for general conversation or if anyone has any technical issues there as well. And afterwards we'll be asking you for feedback on the webinar. So Carol, I'd like to throw over to you for you to give us some tips around this notion of caring at a distance and the role of, I guess, technology and how you use it to communicate during this challenging time.
Okay, I think at the forefront of this has got to be well-being, and because these can be testing times, and when people are new to technology, that's even more testing. So if you're in, you know, communication is so important, and for people that are not used to technology, to having to get to grips with it, we shouldn't underestimate how challenging that is. It's about planning, I think. It's about thinking about this could be quite stressful and how you're going to manage that stress before, during and after. I think that's really important, and it's about getting somebody that knows to talk you through it, or going online for some really good guidance.
Mm-hmm. And I think the common thread that runs through these tips that you've given us here is that even though they are challenging times, there's an element, I think, of self-care in these, that you can only provide the best care to the people you're caring for if you're looking after yourself at the same time. So you don't want to suddenly be overloaded with lots of tech communication. I think that's what you're saying. Is that right?
Completely. Caring can be really stressful anyway. There's lots of demands. Carers are spinning lots of plates. especially if they're not living with the person that they're caring for. They may still be having to do shopping and going out and about. And we all know that shopping currently is incredibly stressful. Trying to do that online is also incredibly stressful at the moment. So it's about recognizing that these added challenges are going to add to the stress levels. And it's important carers take care of themselves and have strategies in place for dealing with that. Because if they don't, it will take them down a path of being worn out, and then what's going to happen? So self-care is so, so important.
And that's the when and how at the top of your list there, isn't it? Is have that open conversation first before it becomes an issue, I guess.
Completely. Self-preservation. Right. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you. So I think we've talked about this a little bit, but these are some of the challenges. I wonder if I love this quote that you've put in about patience. Perhaps you'd like to say a little bit more about that. And I know you're a carer yourself, so any personal experience that you can share there would be really fantastic.
Okay, so yes, it's not measured by your ability to wait, but by your actions and behaviour while you wait. And I think, to be honest, the sense of humour comes in really well at this point. I have one. My dad is 90 and he's blind. My mum's 87, she has dementia, and they live in their home. And I bought them an Alexa, and so trying to get them, first of all, to get the name right was a challenge, so she wasn't responding. And then trying to get them to not be quite so polite and ask something before her name was also quite a challenge, okay? We got there in the end, but it required a sense of humour and some patience. Another person I know in their 80s has just got onto a tablet, and just for her, wanting to know where the volume button was a challenge. I myself have problems with technology. So it's, if somebody is very au fait with it and they're on the other end of the line of somebody that's not, it's remembering sometimes about the basics. And it's about trying to turn the situation into something of a challenge with a sense of fun. And if you can approach it with that, it might make life a bit easier for all concerned. Yeah.
Great. There's some lovely examples there. Thanks for that. So Barbara, I know you sent through some tips as well. I was wondering if you could just give us your take on the same challenge, really, caring at distance and how tech can help.
Of course. I mean, I think we all know it's important to stay in touch with your loved ones at any time. But now, of course, if you're a little bit distant, you can't get close to them, you're physically separated, it's even more important. So I think what we're trying to talk about is just really reminding people that how important it is, and potentially to up the frequency of communications. And it doesn't always need to be about caring. You know, it's important to talk about the caring situation. How are they doing mentally, physically? Are they sleeping well? Are they eating well? How's the shopping going? All hugely important. But equally important is just making sure their mental health is okay. How are the emotions? How are they coping? How are they doing generally? So I think it's just not focusing on the practical, but being aware also of the emotional. That's really a key point. And I think thinking about just more of the fun, relaxing things, if possible, with the person that you're caring for remotely. You know, can you do fun things together? Schedule a cup of tea together. You know, schedule a chat together more frequently than you would have done normally. And there's other ways potentially to join together. You know, there's things like games you can do. There's Scrabble online. There's crosswords online. There's a whole host of ways to be together without actually being together.
That's great. And I think where your two come together is that it's about setting those ground rules, and what you're talking about is having some kind of protected time when you're both in a good space for doing that social engagement. So I think they complement each other really well. That's great. Thank you. So some more tips for you here.
Yeah, I think a big thing, I think all carers know this anyway, but well, everybody knows it. The more organized you are in terms of planning, the smoother life can be. And that's important for carers at any time, but especially important right now. And emergency planning is an important thing to consider. You know, if something more to happen to you, what might you do to help support the person you're caring for? And a big part of that would be to have a plan in place, a written document that would just include all this information. So something to think about now with the person you're caring for is their caring situation, and start to write down some of the factors that you're helping them with. So should you fall unwell yourself or be unable to cope for whatever reason, somebody else would know about that situation and be able to step in.
Great, and you've both provided some excellent links to do with emergency planning, which will be coming up later, and they'll be available for people to follow up with afterwards. So thanks for that.
Sarah, can
Here they
just
are.
say, can I just say, some people will have a plan in place already. It's a good time also to review it, because the people that you have as your emergency contact person may not be able to get to you right now. So it's about thinking about what you have got in the plan and whether that's appropriate. And if it isn't, what you're going to do now.
Yeah, great advice when things are changing so quickly at the moment, I think. So those links are there, and we'll be sharing these afterwards. And anyone who either wants to review their plan or create one if they don't have one will have access to this after the webinar. So that brings me very neatly to our first poll, which I will just launch now. Just going to give it a few seconds for everybody. So what we're asking is whether you actually have an emergency plan in place currently, yes or no. If people could just respond, that would be great. I'm aware not everybody will be in that caring role, so just going to give people a few more seconds to finish that off. Still changing. Okay, so just to end that poll now. Okay, so we can see from, if I share the results, you can hopefully see that 31% of people on the call currently have a plan in place and 69% don't. As I say, not everybody will be in that caring role, but it's interesting to just see those results there. So that's great. Thank you. Moving on. So now we are going to pass over to yourself, James, and to talk about some of the technology that is available to help people during this time. James, are you there? James is frozen on screen. You there, James?
I'm here. Sorry, it's just your screen is just taking a second to
okay, no
load up. Could you just put this back one slide for a second?
Yeah, sure.
As I say, we'll talk about various forms of technology that can help you stay in contact with people. You may have heard a lot about Zoom recently, which a lot of people are using, which is not something I'm going to talk about today generally. Mark from AbilityNet is going to talk about that on a webinar tomorrow if you'd like to know more about that. Zoom is a tool that's designed to do video conferencing, particularly for work. And instead, I'm going to talk about some tools which are simpler, designed for smaller video calls, and are more likely to be things that people might be familiar with already. So if we talk about the first of those, FaceTime. One benefit of FaceTime is that it often already comes on an Apple device. If someone has an Apple device, FaceTime is often already loaded onto the device. The con on the other side of this is that it's only available on Apple devices. So it's great if you've got two people with Apple devices who can talk to each other, or indeed up to 32 people. It's not so good for people who are outside the Apple world in terms of their devices.
Mm-hmm. Great.
If we move on, we've got some links to further resources. Our partners in One Digital, Digital Unite, have a great page on how to use FaceTime. There's also the official advice from Apple and some resources there from Learn My Way about video calling in general. There's two things in particular that are useful here for people on this call. You can set up FaceTime to answer calls automatically after a certain number of seconds so that someone doesn't need to get to the device. And you can also make phone calls easier to hear by using the accessibility settings on an Apple device to remove background phone noise.
Great. So moving on to WhatsApp now. I can see James is frozen again. I'll just give it a minute or two. Are you there, James? Okay, so I think we're having some problems with James, but while we're just waiting for him to come back, in terms of WhatsApp, it runs on iOS and Android. It's a chat app, so you can put text messages in there. One of the things that's great about it is that you can set up a group chat with other contacts. So I've set one up for this time so that I can connect. James, you're back. Great. I can't hear you.
I was just going to say, you carry on if you like.
No, you carry on, James.
Okay. So I was going to say, with WhatsApp, it's...
Oh, James is frozen again there. So yeah, as I was saying there, I've set up a group which is closed for myself and my sibling and for our parents, so that we can just drop a message in and check in at regular intervals, make sure everybody's still well. So we have done a step-by-step on the AbilityNet website. There's a blog there which will walk you through step-by-step on how to set up a family group in WhatsApp. Digital Unite, which James has already mentioned, have got a brilliant overview, and they've also similarly got a step-by-step on how to use WhatsApp on your smartphone. It's a good, I'll just go back one, sorry. It's a good accessible app, and the RNIB's website actually name checks it as an app that's really good for visually impaired people, and is very accessible in that respect. James, give me a wave if you're back. I think we're still having a few technical issues with James. So the next one to move on to is Skype. Which has good ease of use. It does cost extra for Skype calls, and Microsoft is currently moving this over to a different platform called Teams, but it works on multiple devices, Android, iOS, Windows, and it's available on the web and for download as well. So, James, you're back. Do you want to run through the functionality for Skype?
Skype, yes. So Skype is another very common...
I think he's dropping out again, so I'm just going to carry on. So as we've already been through, you can connect to landlines for a fee. It is also possible to use it to offer technical support to others. And again, Digital Unite have got a really great comprehensive guide here in terms of using Skype. So if you want more information, you can look up the how-to guide there as well. So I'm just going to launch our second poll now. One moment. Okay, launch poll. So hopefully most people can see this now. So this is our second poll, and we're just interested in finding out how you are keeping in touch with loved ones at this time. There's the good old-fashioned phone there, which you mustn't forget, email, chat app, or a video call. Video call is certainly coming into its own during this time. So it'd just be great to have a few more seconds and find out which of these people are using. I think you can hopefully check multiple options as well here, because you're probably using one or two or maybe three of these options to keep in touch at this time. So I'm just going to give it another sort of 15 seconds or so just to get everyone have a chance to have their say, and then I'll end the poll and share it. It's a few more seconds. Okay, just ending the poll and share. Okay, so some interesting results here. Phone's still looking pretty popular in terms of a way of keeping in touch. Quite a few of you, as I say, embracing video calls during this time, 73%. Chat apps, we've just been through WhatsApp, are popular as well. Email, not so much. So yeah, interesting results there. So let me just move on. James, are you back and stable?
I am back, but I don't think I am stable.
Okay, great. So I'll carry on in that case. So
So,
another option, no problem. Another option is Google Hangouts. This one, similar to some of the functionality of Zoom, one thing that's good about it is that you can set it up in terms of having a password for people that you want to access the meeting. So there's an added layer of security there. Like some of the other options we've discussed, it can be used on multiple devices and platforms. So that's great in terms of making this available to as many people as possible. You can do instant messaging, voice calls, video calls, and you can get a group of people together on a Google Hangout as well. So as with all the others, we're just sharing some information here for people who want to work out how to set up the app or a walkthrough. There's information here. It's a shame we can't cover it all step by step on this call, but hopefully we're doing some signposting to some really great resources for anybody who wants to use these ways of getting in touch with people after the webinar. So House Party is one that has been getting a lot of attention recently. It seems to have suddenly taken off and lots of people are joining House Party. I think one of the reasons why people like it is like some of the other platforms that we've looked at, you can chat with multiple people at a time. It can be accessed on Apple devices. Been getting a lot of good publicity and some negative publicity as well, which the Consumers Association have got a great blog on this if you want to look into that in some more detail and decide whether it's the right app for you. One of the things that they've identified is that once you've installed it, it's quite difficult to uninstall. So if that's something that is a concern for you, you might decide that you want to go with one of the other options that we've shared here. So yeah, just to flag that up and to make people aware. But the Witch blog has got some really good information on there. We've talked a little bit about how many you're connecting with, and that might be a factor. So WhatsApp can do 4 video users at a time, FaceTime up to 32, House Party 8, and Google Hangouts can cope with 8. I know we've just had that poll as well about how people are connecting, and from my own personal experience I know, and Carol and Barbara may echo this, that having too many people on a call has been a bit too much for my mum. So that's another thing to consider maybe when you're using these apps, is while it's brilliant to get lots of people on there, and for some people who are less familiar with the technology, it may seem a little bit overwhelming. Barbara, I noticed you've come off mute there. Is there something
I was just going to say, bear in mind the fact that a lot of older people especially are hard of hearing, and I think that's a massive factor to consider. So often one-to-one is best, maybe 3 of you, but I think any more can sometimes be a bit overwhelming.
Yeah, and I think it's just that checking in with people again, isn't it, and seeing whether it's working for them. I know my sister and I've adjusted to just doing those one-to-one calls because it works much better. So yeah, just something to bear in mind, that just because you can connect with 32 people, it might not be appropriate depending on who they are. So that's that one. I know Alex, who helped put these slides together, wanted to flag this up in particular as well, which is that just to make it a bit easier, if you do have access to a device holder or a stand, so that you don't have to kind of worry about juggling it and you've got everybody in frame, that's just one less thing to think about while you're on a video call. So that's something else that you might want to think about. As we know, if you don't have one, getting hold of one at this time may prove challenging, but yeah. So I'm going to launch our 3rd poll now, and again it's very relevant to what we've just been discussing, I think, actually. So let me just launch the poll so you can see the questions. So yeah, how are you connecting with people? Are you connecting one-to-one? As a group does seem to be becoming more popular, but as we've said, might not be appropriate for all the people that you're trying to communicate with. Some people may prefer that one-to-one communication, quite likely, and it looks like this is going to be the most popular option. You might be doing a bit of both. You might be having some one-to-one communication and also doing a bit of group communication as well. So I'll just allow a few more seconds for people to answer there. I can see the numbers going up in terms of who's voting. Just a few more seconds. Looks like most people have voted now. Just end the poll there. So yeah, as I say, both looks like the most popular option. Quite a few of you, 19%, doing that one-to-one, and as a group showing up as 4%. Oh, sorry, I haven't shared the results, so I'm saying you can see, but you might not be able to. Yeah, so both seems to be the most popular there. So there we go. Just get rid of this. Okay, so Chris, are you there?
Yep.
I'm going to pass to my colleague Chris, who has just been looking at some kind of standalone devices which are available, which can help people connect during this time. So over to you, Chris, to introduce COMP.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. So just to give people a brief summary, COMP is a one-button computer. It's been made specifically for those who have pretty much little to no experience of using smartphones or computers or tablets. With COMP, it's very easy to use. Lucky enough, I've been able to get my hands on one, and the entire family can easily connect to this device through an app and send photos and messages and make two-way video calls to say their granny or their granddad. When you unbox it first, you go, wow, this is huge. But actually, when you take it out, it's a really, really good piece of technology. It's been designed by No Isolation and developed for them, and you can rent or purchase them through the No Isolation website. The functionality is very good of them. They're very smooth and they run well. So video calling and picture messaging is the two main ones. The video calling and picture messaging is done as easily onboarded through using an app, which is both available on iOS and Android and accessible to the person's house. They do need access to the internet, so we've trialed them on 4G MiFi devices and on Wi-Fi, and on both they work really, really well. Users with software on their apps can send pictures to their COMP device, so older people can feel more connected. So say if you're out for a walk and that person's in isolation, you can send them a photo of what you're seeing, because they might like to do photography or anything like that. But it's really important that you can use that specialist device to do it. And COMP can be set up in your own home and then transferred to your relative's house. So I can set it up here and take it to a friend or family. The good thing actually is that the only thing I would say is connecting on the MiFi device, so connect to 4G, one of these devices you get, is easier because it's automatically, especially during this isolation period, you can pretty much leave it at their door and it's already set up, and all they have to do is pop a plug into the wall for the power, and it works brilliantly. I'm totally in awe with it. I think it's a great piece of technology, and the best place to have a look at and get more information is on the No Isolation website, which will pop in the chat box, but it's noisolation.com, and then you just click COMP because there's a couple of devices. Okay, Sarah, next slide, please.
Okay, great. Yeah, do you want to run through this one?
Yep, so pros of using the COMP, simple to use, is say one button control, and even better, yes, at 27 I forget things very easily, but no need to use passwords, so you don't need to think I'm going to forget my username or password. But the con is at the moment there's been so much high demand for the COMP. They've run out of stock, should be available again in the next few weeks. So the best place, again, keep checking the comp website and on their social media outlets.
You can join a waiting list, I think, Chris.
You can now. Yeah.
Okay.
You can now. Okie doke. Next slide, please.
Okay.
And again, more information.
Chris, could I just interrupt a second? There's two questions that are coming in. One of them persistently is, how much does it cost? I don't know, you might be coming to that. And the other one is about what MiFi is. You mentioned MiFi in passing, and that's obviously important. We're going on beyond that now. So those are two questions just popped up on the Q&A.
Cool, no, thanks, Mark. Yeah, the comp device, I can't exactly remember the full price of it. I've just had a look on their website just now. But again, we'll share that information. Sarah, you're not aware of that, are you?
I'm just looking it up on a different device now.
I think it's 28. Sorry, this is Alex here from AbilityNet. I think it's either 28 or 29 pounds rental a month.
Cheers, Alex. Yeah, I think it's around. I think it's the standard price of a mobile phone. I think if I remember looking at it last time. But we'll definitely get that confirmed. And the MiFi device, so I should explain, is essentially a small router, as I would call it, a little box. Doesn't need any power at all to it, and you can connect using a SIM card. So essentially, it's like a mobile phone, but it's it sits there, acts like a router, and you can connect to it. Hopefully, that clears that one up. Okay, Sarah. George, thank you for sharing that. So George Howe has just popped up on from No Isolation on chat. So it's £29 a month to rent. When it is available, it will be available for purchase only, and the pricing is being discussed, but it's likely in the region of between £400 to £600. So thanks for posting that there, George. Much appreciated. So Facebook portal, something that's still quite new to the market. Yes, it's probably 2 years old, and the first portal. Recently, been having a proper look around it, and I have to say, the first time I came across it was looking at on one night watching TV. Never had heard of it. Went online, and I have to say it looks really good. The functionality around it is, you get video calling. Access to WhatsApp, to Spotify, and it's got Alexa also built in. It's really clever. It's very smooth again and sleek to run. And the story time facility. Now, I wish this was around when I was younger, because it says you can read younger family member stories. Now, I think that's really good. But one thing I do like about the portal, again, is just by speaking to people, is the sound of them. So the sound is crystal clear, the audio and the video is crystal clear. So you can have, that live discussion with somebody, and it literally looks, it's scary. It looks like you're in that person's house talking to them. There's an advert on their website, if you go to portal.facebook.com, and it shows a lady cooking in the kitchen, and it's if you want to run your own cooking show and during this isolation period, well, it's a perfect opportunity. But it's really good, and it minimizes the background noise. So if you've got, for example, if you're working from home and you've got kids shouting and bawling and playing with toys in the background, it's a great thing just to minimize that after looking at the reviews. And like I say, the other good thing is you can surround yourself with the sound. It's very much flexible. Okay, Sarah, let's move to the next slide, please.
Okay.
So the pros of it, if you have Facebook, you can use Facebook Portal to connect on Messenger, and not on general on the posts. Added features for reading stories to family members, great idea again. And it includes a camera which attaches to the TV. The con of it, though, with anything related to Facebook and other social media, privacy is a concern. The camera is always watching, but you need to disable it. You can disable it if needed. There's been a lot of stuff online recently in the last couple of weeks, people questioning it and saying, yes, is it safe because, the camera's watching, the camera's on, anyone could be watching. yet you can turn it off. There's a lot of assuring comments online on forums. So if you can, people, what's the word, scaremonger at times and say, oh, this is terrible and that, you've got to look at the pros and the cons online and have a good look at it. The pricing, again, to me is very reasonable. There's different portals now that have developed. So the Portal Mini is the first one. And again, to share this, Portal are actually giving you up to £50 of your purchase until the 18th of April. I think it's specifically during COVID. So Portal Mini should be £129, it's sitting at £79, and the main portal itself at the moment is sitting, I'm just confirming this, at £119. So everyone's doing their bit. So again, it's a good way of keeping in touch with your loved ones, your friends, your family during this time of COVID. And certainly these devices should be used at any time particular to both Comp and Portal. Okay, Sarah.
Okay, great. We'll just briefly, I'll just run through this because.
Sorry, can I just ask a question? I've got a question coming in here. You've mentioned a couple of devices there. Somebody's asked about Google Duo. There are other devices with a video screen that you can interact in this way, aren't there? These aren't the only two.
Yeah, there are, and some of the smart speakers, those types of devices, I think that might be what you're talking about, Mark, also come with some of the screens, don't they? So that you can have a video call as well as using the audio.
Yeah.
And we can round some of those up after the webinar as well, if people want.
Right.
I can try this one if you can hear me, Sarah.
Yeah, that'd be great, James.
So yeah, I was going to, with this, someone's asked a question, what is MiFi? So MiFi is mobile internet. So it means that you can connect to the internet through a 3 or 4G phone signal rather than through fixed broadband connection.
Oh, he's gone.
He's gone. Okay, well, I'll take over. So
somebody pointed out that you usually have to have a battery connection. You charge that up as a little extra device. It's not the same as having it plugged into your telephone wire. So it could be very flexible, but it's also comes with you need to keep it plugged in.
There are other ones though, Mark. The ones that we've been given through Comp, or the one I'm using, certainly doesn't have a power outlet.
Okay, cool.
So just to clarify that.
Yeah. Okay. It's basically just using your mobile phone rather than connecting into broadband.
Yeah, exactly.
Some mobile companies do have a limit on how much data you can use with those, but I have noticed that during the COVID and the situation we're in now, quite a lot of those mobile providers have actually removed those caps temporarily, so that if people are in social isolation, so it's worth just checking in if you're going to be doing a lot of video calling, whether you have a data cap or not.
Yeah, it's also they've zero rated lots of websites, like for instance NHS websites, so you won't see those count against your data.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
I think I can be okay if you just have my audio. So I was just going to say about BT Basic, which is a set of it's an offer by BT, which if you are receiving certain benefits, you can access a cheap package. So you need to be getting income support, income-based job seekers allowance, pension credit, employment and support allowance.
Okay. I think James might have dropped out again there, but the link is there. So I think that's really helpful at this time when lots of people are finding themselves in that situation, but the link is there for people to go and have a look afterwards. So I'll move on from there. There are some links here to further information. So we have a link for ourselves. Helpline is available. Care for the Carers website. The number there as well. Citizens Online, RNIB, and the Stroke Association, who are some of the other people that we have been working with during this time. So I will just throw this back over. Apologies, I'm not sure. Barbara, is this one of your slides here?
I think it was actually one of Carol's, but if Carol's still there, I'll run through it otherwise.
Okay, great.
I'm still here, but go ahead.
No, go for it, Carol. It's fine. Go for it.
Okay. Yes, just It's about planning, really. It's about thinking about where you're at now and where this might take you. It's about asking for help. If you're not getting any support, there is support out there. Each county has got a carers centre. There's Carers Trust, and there's Carers UK that you can go in there and put your postcode and it will give you one. Or you can ring us at Care for the Carers and we will find your local carer centre for you. There is various types of support, so please don't manage this on your own. And tasks, like I say, if you're going to have a difficult day, if you're going to be in touch and have to do something difficult, plan it, think about how that might stress you. Give yourself something nice to look forward to at the end of it. And online, there's all types of things. You know, you can join the theatre, you can go in the library and get books, there's music, there's mindfulness, there's lots of stuff out there. Use what's out there.
Yeah, so I guess we just wanted to come full circle and just address specifically those carer needs again, didn't we? To say that, you know, yes, it is a time of physical distancing, and we're all doing everything that we can to kind of close that physical gap, I guess, but just to remind people again that self-care as well as caring for others so that you can carry on caring for others is just as important.
Yes, completely. Yeah. You matter too. If you're a carer, you matter too. And you may not have identified as a carer before. You know, you're a wife, a husband, a brother, a friend, and people don't like to be labelled as a carer, but consider yourself in a caring role, and therefore there is support out there, and please don't miss out on it.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And in our next webinar, which is next week, we are actually going to be looking at how, specifically addressing how you can find local physical support for somebody who you might be caring for at a distance, and how you can use technology to reach out and find that. And I know you guys are providing us with some information for that, as well as joining in with the webinar today. So do watch out for that one if you think it will be useful for you as well. So that's great. So another roundup here. So I won't read all of these out, but there's a great list of email contacts and links for specific carers organisations here where people can find more information, and they will be shared with everybody after the webinar. So thank you both for helping to put that list together.
Thank you for inviting us. Yeah.
Welcome. And there's a roundup here similarly of in terms of specific tech support that we're continuing to provide through AbilityNet. You know, we're keeping it business as usual as much as we possibly can. So the free phone telephone support is still available. You can email us. We can still would very much welcome people who want to volunteer and to help people. Mark, as we've mentioned, is doing another webinar tomorrow, which is specifically looking for people who might now find themselves working from home, and we've launched a new service to help people make sure that they've got the reasonable adjustments that they need in the home when they may previously have been working in a more conventional, I guess, workplace. So do follow those links as well. So that brings me to our final poll, which I will just launch now.
While you're doing that, Sarah, I have got a couple of questions that have been
Sure.
made, which we may know the answers to, or just a couple of things to point out. There's a few questions in here about making these tools accessible. You know, whether there's a particular recommendation around working with people with hearing impairments, and then another question about any dementia-friendly solutions. Is any of this technology dementia-friendly? I don't know whether anybody has any comments about that on the group.
I would just recommend the Alzheimer's Society website. It's got a lot of useful information. As with any kind of disability or anything, it's focused in that area. So, I mean, by all means, give us a call at the office, but also if you're thinking dementia specific or anything else specific, have a look on the website if you've got access to it, and they will have the information on there.
And I know from my personal experience, I've got a couple of friends who are dealing with these challenges at the moment, and one of them has said that they're actually not doing the video calling with the person who's got dementia because they find it more distressing to be able to see them on a video call and not understand why they can't see them physically. So it might be quite a personal thing, I think, as well.
Absolutely. I think you're right, Sarah. Yeah.
Okay, so I think if I just end the poll and share, and this is about whether you'd be interested in joining future AbilityNet live webinars. We're putting together a whole program of these, and fantastic to see that 98% of you would be interested in joining us for some more. So as I say, next week we'll be looking at where you can find local support, kind of physical support from some of the people who are working during this crisis, but using tech to access that. And we'll also be looking at, Carol, you touched on things like entertainment, you know, learning things that you can do for yourself. We've got a webinar coming up on that in the future. We're also going to be looking at how people can stay safe online. You know, communities are really pulling together, but in times of crisis, there's that minority who look to take advantage. So we're keen to address that, and we've got a great expert who used to work for a security software firm who's joining us for a webinar, and we'll be giving some real hands-on practical tips on how to stay safe as well, which is an important element of this. So great to see so many of you want to join in, and do visit our website to find out more information on that.
And just to add, Sarah, that if people hadn't spotted it at all yet, the Q&A has got lots of answers as well as questions in it, and we'll be sharing that document. We can download that and share it, but we will also be doing a list of links that we think have arisen out of the session and sharing those around to people afterwards.
Great. So Mark, are there, I know you've been sharing some of those, are there some others that we've got a few minutes now for some Q&A? Are there some questions that you'd like to pull out of there, some questions and answers that would be worth sharing?
I was going to mention something which is an answer to a couple of questions, is that you may have mentioned it and people might have missed it. The reason that the captions are coming up along the bottom is because you're presenting in PowerPoint. Mm-hmm. So if you have somebody who needs to have captions for hearing reasons, one thing you can do, whatever this is only works on Zoom, it wouldn't work in WhatsApp, for example, is that you could use Zoom to pull up a presentation, and it can hear both sides of the conversation. So it can hear me and it's doing my captions, but it also can do yours. So as a simple way of holding a meeting with captions, that's one way of doing it. We're talking about this tomorrow as well on this webinar, but the other one is that Microsoft Teams has built-in captions. To the best of my knowledge, there isn't, in the other examples you were giving, like WhatsApp, there isn't an easy way of bringing it in, but there are some apps that can do translation and transcription on the fly. Yours is it called Transcript, what you use? I can't remember what you said.
Script is one that I use. It doesn't do it on the fly though. It's for if you've got an audio recording and you want to transcribe it afterwards. Well,
we were using otter.ai, which you can have on your phone, and it can put it next to the audio source, and it will give you live captions. We've just been using it now. So there are ways that you can get live text from the speech of any of the devices that you're using. So they're a way to work with people with hearing impairments.
Okay. We can share those links, as you say, afterwards as part of our roundup.
Absolutely. And then the other thing, there's several people been mentioning the various constraints on Zoom. It's a 40-minute maximum. Hangouts doesn't have that maximum. Apparently, I don't know whether it does have any maximum time that a meeting takes place on a
Zoom
Hangout.
have actually waived it for the pandemic, for COVID-19, so there's no limit.
That's on the free account, yeah.
It seems confusing for people. I think it's if you sign up for a free account fully, then you should be able to go beyond the 40-minute limit. If you're just using it as a user, you might not, but if you have an account and you're hosting meetings to it, it should be beyond 40 minutes.
So register then. Yeah. Okay, thanks, James.
Hey, could I just jump in just about the volunteering at the moment? So we're not recruiting just now.
We are.
Are we? Okay, cool. No, because I was aware that we weren't, but maybe that's changed.
Sarah Brain just said we're not.
Yeah, we're definitely not.
Okay. Sorry.
No. Just in case anyone is applying just now and you wonder why we're not getting back, to you, is that we have suspended it just now.
Okay. And it's worth saying, Chris, that's partly because we have an awful lot of volunteers who were previously going into the homes who are now working remotely, and so we've got much greater capacity to do the things that we're being asked to do anyway. So
very much so. The service is very much running remote support just now, And I've got to say, everyone's teaming up. It's really good. So if you need help, give us a call because we're ready to help.
That's great to hear. Thanks, Chris. So I'm just checking time on my alternative device. Got a few more minutes. Is there anything else, Mark, that you think is important to draw out of the Q&A now before we close, and then we can follow up after?
I'll mention that the actually somebody just pulled up future.now, which is really good. That's a service. I think BT are part of it, which is trying to share donated devices such as laptops, tablets, and phones. I spotted this just earlier today. So they're getting the most vulnerable online during the COVID-19 crisis. It's supported by the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport. Future.now are coordinating industry action through a new initiative targeting 1.7 million households that don't have access to the internet. So that is a way that people may be able to get online, whether themselves or family and friends. We'll definitely put the link to that in the resources afterwards.
And that reminds me, Mark, of Wavelength, which I know you're familiar with. There's another organisation called Wavelength. And one thing that they do is you can sign up and apply on behalf of family or friends who are feeling isolated and get a free digital radio from them. And they're working currently with BBC on that programme as well. So you can find out information via BBC or direct through Wavelength, and we can share those links afterwards as well.
It's worth pointing out that their website says that they're pausing at the moment due to overwhelming.
Oh, does it? Okay, I haven't been on there for a few days.
Whereas I think that future.now is still underway. They're just pulling that together. So
I've dropped the future.now link in the webinar chat. It's worth saying that they're running that through UK online centres and a kind of verification process. So I think it's using the government's registering as a vulnerable person list. So there is a bit of bureaucracy or administration around it. It's not just that you can say, I'd like a device and you get one, but it's still very much something that's worth people looking into.
That's brilliant. Thank you both. Okay.
I just want to clarify something that did come in. So the live captioning that we're doing on this meeting is not part of Zoom. Just to clarify, it's a button you click when you do a presentation in PowerPoint. It is in pretty much any current version of PowerPoint. On the slideshow button, you can enable captions, but it's not part of Zoom. Zoom doesn't present them. This just happens to be sharing Sarah's screen, which has PowerPoint captions on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else, Mark, that's coming in that you think it's worth mentioning?
No, the slides are on the website already. The video will be there, today, tomorrow, first thing tomorrow. And we're going to do some notes as well based on the links that have been shared, just to answer them. The questions and answers will be shared with you. So if you have missed something, don't worry. And the webinar tomorrow, you can find details of that on abilitynet.org.uk/webinars.
Okay.
And that will cover stuff that we've mentioned briefly here, but in a bit more detail around running meetings.
That's brilliant. And just from me, thank you once more to everybody who's joined the webinar. I hope it's been useful, and thank you so much to all the people behind the scenes and on the webinar for pulling it together as well. Thanks ever so much.